And what he's complaining about is usually you feel a very definite end to the travel of your throttle pedal. It's almost like metal hitting metal, and that's what you expect. So he's feeling that's not actually happening. It's more of a spongy end to the travel. And
great little shot up in the left-hand side of your screen there. You can see what's happening as the car's moving as well. But just watch as he stands on the loud pedal. But what I did see is he opened the throttle when we saw that shot straight away. As he went over the curb, the pedal kind of came back a bit mid-straight, and I wonder if that's just because he's not on that end stop and not pushing it as hard. You get that because you would never see that in the data, and it's not anything that would let you do it. But
yeah,
you can see it just moving there on the bumps, and I don't think if the end stop was there, it would do that.
So it's quite interesting these days because there's a lot of, you'd say, open source technology involved in Formula One. It's not like the old days where that was a very secretive part of the car. The pedal box now is open source, so anyone can see your design. So I know that the McLaren pedal system is a work of art, really. It's a thing of beauty. It's got like a double linkage to it, so it doesn't just fall away from your foot. The whole thing kind of slides forwards, so your heel doesn't come off the ground as your foot goes down onto the pedal. Because your whole foot actually moves forward with your heel. It's a very clever mechanism.
Does it take some getting used to as a driver?
No, it feels quite natural. I have driven cars like that in the past, actually. I think the early BAR had a very similar mechanism. A little bit heavier, perhaps, but it's not, quite a natural feel to it.
Kind of stops the kangaroo effect, you know, that kind of oscillations that you would get on power pickup, which the Mercedes engine used to struggle with, especially in the V8 days, on part throttle. I think that's where that comes from.
All right, let's go down and join Ted. Ted.
Wow, this sounds really weird, Anthony. I want to get one of these for my EV. Do they... sorry, you got a replay there, Ant? Or Rach?
Yeah, just a Pierre Gasly.
Yeah, I can't drive like this, engine problem.
We see an issue, we see the problem.
That's what you're talking about, Paul, wasn't it? Just sometimes you hit a bit of drivability problems. The driver's very quick to pick it up, and obviously you feel that through your pedal as well. And if it's not a linear process, if it's not smooth in its action, it really affects you.
Yeah. Back to you, Ted.
So as we see De Vries here, that's going to hurt. It's such a weird feeling. Obviously, we have to have each car has to have a young driver at one practice session, and Lewis Hamilton has chosen this one where he says, "I don't mind Nick De Vries, you take my car." But it's the weirdest feeling to see Lewis standing at the back of the garage, not in his car, in a practice session. We've never ever seen this before. Obviously, Hamilton's missed races, notably when he's had COVID in Bahrain a couple of years ago, hasn't he, Rachel? But
yes,
I've never seen this, and it's really odd.
And it must feel odd for him, Ted.
To see Lewis standing there with headphones on and his T-shirt with Toto and the other engineers watching someone else in his car. Yeah, as you say, it must feel weird to him. So
I think he actually said in the press conference yesterday, "I'll watch it from my room," but he's obviously not done that. He's come down to watch it from the garage.
Yeah, in the honorary spot at the back of the garage. So yeah, it's almost as if, you know, you could sort of look forward to a kind of weird alternative reality where he's kind of some team, you know, he's retired and he's now some team advisor to a young driver in the car, sort of like a Hollywood movie. Maybe that Hollywood movie that he's doing with Brad Pitt.
Yes, this is what he's practicing
Anyway.
For. He's getting used to his pit wall face.
Exactly.
So
Vision into the future.
Yeah. Very odd, very odd. He'll be back in FP2, of course.
Brilliant, thanks, Ted.
I obviously benefited from doing some Fridays in 2010 to get to 2011, and it's an interesting dynamic when you become a race driver, when you sit with your engineer and you've got somebody else next to you who's equally driving the same car as you, who's kind of in your office space, taking up your engineer's time, and share your engineer's time, and sharing that. It's obviously taken Lewis 300 Grand Prix weekends to do that, but what he is able to do is see how Bono's working, and I'm sure he'll be analysing how Bono's working with all his computers and all the information coming at him and the information that Bono's given to Nick, because Lewis is standing there witnessing that and actually seeing it in person.
I bet he makes some notes from it, yeah.
Well, at the end of it, it's maybe something to ask Toto. What was Lewis saying in the meeting afterwards, going forward, that he feels like he could benefit from?
I can imagine. Yeah, it obviously doesn't just feel strange for Lewis, but also for Nick driving somebody else's car, not just anyone else's car. It's Lewis Hamilton's car, and we've already seen him go over the curb on the exit of turn 2, and every time you make a small mistake like that, you're thinking, oh, I've just done that to Lewis's car, and I better keep it easy, but also I want to show what I'm made of. I want to show the lap times I can do. And to do that, you need to properly exploit every part of the track.
You can't hit the wall here, but it's probably the safest track in the world not to hit the wall.
But that's
why
what I'm
the
saying.
tarmac and all these runoffs. I wonder if that's why Lewis has went, yeah, you can have my car at this track.
Well, that's what I
There's
said.
a
Maybe
lot
it's
of runoff,
a
yes.
sensible circuit. I said it right at the beginning. It's a sensible track to actually choose. But I have seen cars hit the barrier here. It's not
We
a
happened
common
last
thing.
year,
But
didn't we? Was it Yuki Tsunoda last year?
Schumacher did as well recently, didn't he, in qualifying?
Because you go across, as you see from the pictures there, you've got the blue runoff there, which isn't as abrasive, and then the red that's really abrasive, and that's to slow you down even more before you get to the barrier.
what has George Russell been up to through turn 4? This is 4, the left-hander into 5. Looking for the bump. There we are.
Looks unsettling, doesn't
yeah,
it?
it just look at that as it's three-wheeling through that bump and then locks as it reattaches. But
That's one of those bumps you're just going to ignore all weekend, aren't you? You
have
can't
to.
set the car up around that.
no, and everyone's in it together. You're all going to feel that the same.
You mean ignore as in not try and do anything to
Exactly.
compensate for it, but not ignore as in don't run over it?
It looks like there's nowhere else they can go. They'll
Right.
try a few different lines, maybe turn in a bit earlier, a bit later, but it looks like it's bang on the apex. So there's nothing that anyone can do about that, and you just have to accept it. Look, it gives this very flat circuit a little bit of character for that one moment.
What are you trying to say? He's not got much character, Ryan.
Riding on board with Pierre Gasly at the moment, he said after the race in Austria they need some updates. They're really falling behind in this development race now, AlphaTauri. Desperate for some updates. They've only got a couple of small ones here. Looking at the floor, essentially the body, the fences and the floor edge, and a little bit around the diffuser and the engine cover. But they are falling away, aren't they, in this? And it's been tough. Both of them said last weekend how tough it's been.
Well, they were clearly way further forward last year and way more in it, but I think now what you've got is you've got Alpine in the mix. They're obviously dealing with a much faster Ferrari this year. McLaren are kind of there or thereabouts depending on the weekend, and you know they kind of find themselves where they are. Probably where you would predict a team to be on the resource that they've got with the other manufacturers around them and what's available. But you know what Pierre wants, he wants to be going forward, he wants to be fighting for those 5th and 6th places that he could easily get on a lot of weekends last year on a Saturday and race his way into the points most times, but it's just not there, is it? And you want stuff to come forward quicker as a driver always. As he crosses the line, he goes P7, but it's 2 seconds down. I mean,
He's on the medium tyre at the moment. Max's time set on the soft tyre. Max Verstappen with a 1:34.9. Teammate Sergio Perez with a 1:35.5. And Charles Leclerc also on the soft tyre, their third quickest. And Nick de Vries on the mediums there with that 1:36.32.
Throttle with mode charge. The turbo is a bit inconsistent. Don't know if it's normal or not.
We'll come back to you on that.
I mean, he had the throttle pedal issue in Austria, and he said he was lifting and coasting to feel how much throttle he had because it was sticking. It seemed between 1 and 2, gears 1 and 2, and causing issues.
It was on the latter part of braking, basically, that he was experiencing that in Austria towards the final few laps. And look, it was a real heroic effort to drive with a throttle that's partially sticking open. And as we all know, these F1 engines these days are very torquey, very powerful. Even just a little bit of throttle stuck open is going to give you a lot of torque demand. That's what Vettel been up to in turns 8 and 9. Oh, he's had to bail out of it as he's picked up a bit of understeer mid-corner. And that's a rough curve. That's a bit of a self-policing moment through turn 9 exit. And Pierre Gasly, I think we saw this from the onboard shot, actually, that tiny correction he had to make through turn 8. But yeah, so Charles there was just talking about the turbo feeling inconsistent and maybe the power coming through in a way that he's feeling it's harder to drive, harder to manage. So completely different problem to what he had in Austria, of course. But yeah, looking back at those last couple of laps, I can't believe he was able to keep the lap time he did, because how unnerving would that be to lift off the throttle and feel the engine pushing you on towards the braking zones, and also not knowing next time you lift off the throttle, is it going to be at 100%?
Is it going to be a consistent issue?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
but there is a fail-safe in there, isn't there? If there's so much brake pressure,
Yeah.
I think it's 0.3 of a second. If you've got brake pressure and throttle above a certain load, it will deactivate the torque, so you won't get any drive forward. But he's driving around, but he said it's partial throttle and recharge. It doesn't feel clean.
And you can see on the throttle graphic on the left-hand side of your screen.
Sounds rough though, doesn't it? But I wonder if that's a map the Ferrari are trying, or whether they've actually got a problem.
Let's just have a listen to this.
I wouldn't say he's going to open up a lap here. I would think he's going to come back in the pits, isn't he?
He's taking it very carefully. But
Or
yeah,
maybe
I
he is.
agree that the engine doesn't sound completely smooth, but maybe he's looking in the mirrors to see, looking at the circuit map, he's got Magnussen and Ocon coming up behind him. Yeah, looks like he's carrying on.
Do you think the microphone's not right in that car? Picking up the sound? 'Cause it doesn't sound right, does it?
Not to us, it doesn't. Maybe it's different to
There we go.
anyone listening back at home. But here we go. Yeah.
There's something going on in the background, I think, with the mic, isn't there?
All right, let's have a look at this then. So goes slightly downhill towards turn 1, turn 2 chicane. Brake just before the 50-meter board on the right. Bit of understeer mid-corner there through the left-hand part and avoid the curbs on the right.
Yellow flag here in sector 1 at the moment.
Yeah, Perez looks like he's had a bit of a run through turn 4, rejoins midway through turn 5. Now that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take it through the cones, the bollard, on the outside of turn 5. So that's an interesting one. We have to have a look at that later on, maybe get this up on the SkyPad at the end of the session to show where you should go. Oh yeah, let's have a look at the replay. So this is after turn 1, turn 2, towards turn 3. He's going to probably run a bit wide here. Yeah. Oh, and actually spins around. Keep out of barriers, just about.
Yeah, you can't ask him to go around those cones on the outside of the track.
So yeah, he's actually ended off the other on the outside of turn 4. So very different scenario to what I thought had happened. Oh, and just look at that, the way it just bit him as he turned in.
That
Maybe there's a gust of wind there or something. We saw cars getting affected in Austria, and I do feel like these cars this year are more susceptible to that than last year.
That wasn't far away from the wall either, and that's that grippy tarmac you were talking about, Rach. Going across the blue, when you get to the red, that's when it destroys the tyres, but he's not going to be running around on that set again. Just look at the flat spots picked up on them.
Yeah, there we go. He'll be taking those back very carefully back into the garage and
getting rid of them. Been the first retirement in 2 of the last 3 races. Not had a good run of it of late, and also obviously had to retire after that contact, I should say, in Austria. So at the moment we've had 20 minutes of run
session.
He's been out on a bike ride with his team around this area, which is beautiful, by the way, but he's been out for a bike ride as well this weekend. Long bike ride.
Carlos Sainz attacking turn 1, turn 2. Now last year they had quite aggressive sausage curbs on the exit, the yellow curbs on the exit of turn 2, and I feel like what we've already mentioned in the fact that this year's car can't really accept the bumps and the curbs as much as last year's cars. So I feel like they've removed those on the exit of 2 because I believe, like we saw with Nick de Vries, that exit curb, again, like turn 9 exit, where he's coming up to here, is a bit more self-policing than it would have been last year. So perhaps that gives them the chance to, you know, not have to look so intently at the track limit situation. Fingers crossed as I say that. I'm sure it won't be quite as bad as it was in Austria, but yeah, let's wait and see how it builds up through the remainder of the weekend as they try and exploit every 10th of a second they can.
Over 6 tenths down already though, after the end of sector 2 here. Let's see what time he can put on the board then compared to Max Verstappen's time at the top. He is on the softs now. Carlos has been running the mediums up until this point.
So there's another curb. See that on the exit of turn 12. The car really started to bounce around, mostly on the front end actually. Works his way around the penultimate corner into the final corner at turn 15, one of the tightest corners on the circuit. Crosses the line, 34.9 to beat. And yeah, quite a way off, just over a second away at this stage behind George Russell.
Yeah, up into 5th. Quickest then. And I mean, you look at that Mercedes pace, a lot's been talked about it this weekend about whether or not the upgrade they're bringing or the upgrades they're bringing are going to benefit them here. This track is smooth. It's the sort of track that they are expecting this car to go well at, aren't they? More sort of Silverstone-esque performance, I guess.
I did as well. I did a bit in the sim pre-event work before coming here, and it it's very similar to how the car felt in Silverstone. So similar surface and smoothness as well to that track. Different layout, of course, and there's a lot of emphasis on straight line speed around here. Silverstone's more about the high-speed corners and the abilities of the car in that respect. But yeah, it did feel good here, and I believe that even without bringing upgrades here, it'd be a better circuit for them than Austria. Let's see how it unfolds.
Watching Robert Kubica here, as we said, in the car for Valtteri Bottas in this FP1 session with Alfa Romeo, and it's been a while since we've seen him in the car. This Alfa Romeo have had a bit of a downturn, I guess. I mean, they were up there, they were battling well. This Ferrari engine looked like it was really going to bring in some performances for them, but the Valtteri and Joe last time out, both just need more from it.
It's similar to the AlphaTauri story, isn't it? You know, start the year pretty strong. Even more so, you'd have to argue, with the Alfa Romeo team. A short wheelbase car, a light car, because of that fact.
I think,
the lightest, probably the only car that was hitting the weight limit at the beginning of the season in Bahrain. And the short wheelbase car should work quite well around that circuit as well. So they really hit the ground running. It looked like they were going to have a great season, but in a first year of any new rule change, you're always going to see seismic changes with every iteration of the car that comes along. Every upgrade you bring has to work, probably will work, and there are huge points of downforce gain every single time you bring something new to the car. It's just the way it works in a new set of regulations, and there's always going to be that leapfrogging situation going on this year because of that, and you've got to be very wise when you bring the updates as well, because it costs, and they're all limited now to, sounds crazy, isn't it? Limited to 140, or just over now, they've changed it, $140 million. And B, you're limited on wind tunnel time as well. Alfa Romeo were one of those teams through the winter and beginning of this year that have more wind tunnel time than other teams like Ferrari that look out on the screen now, because of that kind of balancing of performance of wind tunnel time that they all have. So they've got to play that game as well, and we'll see this natural ebb and flow of teams bringing developments at different points through the year.
It's hard, isn't it? I mean, it's gone up to 145.5 million when you add in the 3.1% that they've increased the cost cap to. They have this 5 million buffer, if you like, that's seen as a minimal overspend compared to over 5 million as a material overspend. So if they really want to push it, they can get up to about 152.7 million, I'm reliably informed. But when you have a team like Alfa Romeo and the smaller teams, they were saying we're meeting that cost cap, or we're meeting it. The bigger teams want more of an increase, and you have to find a happy medium. But you're right, that could impact the smaller teams.
It's good that none of them are happy. I think that's when you find
it's true. Yeah. If
that
no one's happy, it's fair.
It's fair.
What you don't want to see is employees sacrificing their earnings and their workload.
Yes,
and
where the cuts are made needs to be,
by the cost of life, which is changing dramatically generally across the world, and more importantly in the UK at the moment. You don't want to see that to the impact of all the people that are putting the effort in, and I think that's the most important thing. And I think where Formula 1 is now to where it was 3 years ago when this was decided is very different as well in the projection, and probably everyone is seeing the benefits of sponsorship and money coming in, and by the end of the day, they may be seeing it as a business point of view. They want to earn the money from it, as opposed to take the performance and just everything about winning outside of it. And that's where we're not in those meetings to understand that.
On track with Danny Ricciardo at the moment. Ted, we're going to come down to you, Ted. Ted, when I saw your interview with Carlos Sainz yesterday, I was trying to read his body language, as I always do with every driver when they speak to us. And I thought he looked a little bit deflated, and I said to you, didn't I think he's taking a new engine this weekend, and I think he's starting at the back. What can you tell us?
I have news from Ferrari that your body language reading is spot on, Rachel. So he is taking a new engine, but he's not taking a grid penalty for all the bits. He is taking a grid penalty, so I buried the lead there somewhat. So Carlos Sainz is taking a grid penalty, but at the moment,
do you think that'll be the end of it?
At the moment, it's only for the control electronics, because obviously he was on his second, and they all ended very nastily in that pretty horrible fire. So at the moment he's taken his third control electronics, which is not in conformity with the Article 28.2 of the sporting regulations. So that's a 5th place, or is it a 10th place for control electronics? I'll refer that back to you. But he's also taken a new other parts of the a new battery, and but has not needed a new MGUH or a new turbocharger, or indeed at the moment a new internal combustion engine. So listen, it's probably going to end up being back of the grid for Sainz, because I would anticipate they will take PU4 for all of those bits for the Ferrari driver, just like Charles Leclerc's on it, to get some more in the pool. But at the moment, it's just the control electronics. Hamilton, by the way, is now on turbocharger 3, or rather Hamilton's car, it's De Vries at the moment, and MGUH 3 as well. They've taken a new one of them. And we have some other smatterings of engine stores, of energy stores, batteries. Russell, Hamilton, Sainz and Zhou Guanyu also with a new battery. I expected to see Kevin Magnussen on that list as well for Haas in his Ferrari power unit, but so far nothing. But we'll see if that changes throughout the week.
Yeah, I mean, we have to wait till they put the new parts on the car and it goes on track at that point.
Yeah, which could be Saturday morning.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. Thank you very much for that, Ted. And just before I confirm those penalty points, just talk us through, watching Lando Norris there, this does not look easy to drive.
Not easy to drive in what sense?
Well, it didn't look very smooth before.
Well, I think he's on an old set of tires as well. You can obviously see that by the sector time so far. He's not improving at the moment. We saw Daniel Ricciardo just before we came on as well. He was struggling with front locking at the final stage of the lap.
That was Daniel Ricciardo then, apologies. That was Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah.
I
Sorry,
looked up to see Norris. I was looking down at my notes. I was looking down at my notes, and when I looked up, it was still a McLaren, so apologies.
Right.
Yes, you're right. Daniel it didn't look easy to drive with Daniel.
I didn't mean to sound confused when you asked that, but now you understand why.
I totally understand why.
But there is a lack of grip out there. You're right, Paul, and you can see these older tyres. And I heard a lock-up as well for Lando arriving into turn 3, and it carried that small flat spot through turn 4 into 5. So both drivers seem to be struggling a bit with the front end locking. Obviously loads of tools inside the car that you can play with to rebalance that. But I'm just wondering if their car is a little bit susceptible to three-wheeling, like we saw one of the other cars through turn 5. It was Mercedes, wasn't it, through turn 5? And if that inside wheel just lifts ever so slightly, then it can lock easier, and then it's better to go around the corner with a contact patch of 4 instead of 3. You get more grip of it, and that's why I think they're struggling a bit with the front end.
I can confirm it was 10 place penalty. That's why I was looking down and missed the switch between the two McLaren cars. It is 10 places for Carlos at the moment.
Easily done.
There you go.
Fully justified
Thanks.
as well.
Am I off the hook now, or am I still?
You're never on the hook.
Crofty's very good at reading notes and
Oh, here we go.
commentating.
Crofty can multitask. This is what you're saying, isn't it? Okay, right. Let's join Günther on the pit wall, because Günther Steiner's with us all this weekend. Günther, great to talk to you. On a great run of form at the moment. Your team and your two drivers performing well. What are your thoughts and hopes this weekend? The only team not to bring updates, but I hear you've got some coming soon.
Yeah, I hope we can continue where we left off in Austria, but it will be difficult, but we try our best, and our upgrades are coming next weekend, some of it, or all of it, hopefully, you know. So, you know, but I'm still pretty confident with the car as it is now. So hopefully we can have a weekend without problems.
When I spoke to Kevin in Austria, Günther, he thought actually he could have challenged the Mercedes a little bit more out there. Do you think you're up to their pace this weekend as well?
I'm not sure that we can challenge the Mercedes. I mean, you know, I think Kevin was a little bit optimistic there, but I don't know yet. You know, we have to see where we finish off tonight. You know, after FP2, we maybe know a little bit more, but it will be difficult. Mercedes, I mean, yeah, Mercedes, they're strong, you know. Tonight, you know,
Günther, it's Anthony here up in the comments box alongside Rachel. You look very strong and competitive in the straight line performance in Austria. This is a circuit where that's a paramount. You need that straight line speed. Does that give you more confidence, and do you expect that kind of performance again in the straight line here?
It is the aero setup, as you know, Anthony. I think that the aero setup we used in Austria was very advantageous for us compared with other cars. I need to see here what the other one brings, how competitive we are, but in general, on this, I call them classic tracks. It looks our car is pretty strong, so hopefully we can find a good balance of the car and repeat Austria. But it's we have work to do, I think.
Good throws, Paul. I'm not trying to stir it up here, but is any communication transferred over to this race weekend with your drivers? What the objectives are in the race and what the team want?
Absolutely, the team wants points up, Paul.
Well, I spoke to Mick yesterday, Gunther, and he explained the situation in Austria and said, you know, the team said don't overtake. We don't want to lose points in the race, which is what you risk when you try and overtake your own drivers. So he explained it all to us and seems sort of fairly calm with it all. But did it play out as you hoped, or was there anything else that could have been done differently in that sprint? In the sprint.
Yes, for sure we could have done differently, but we had the meeting before the race, and we actually told them this is, if we are both close together or behind each other, this is what will happen, you know. In the DRS zone, you will catch up and you think you're faster, but as soon as you let somebody overtake, you lose time. Both cars lose time, and the guy behind us, which was nobody less than Lewis Hamilton, will take advantage of that at the time. He obviously know that he was coming, that he was there. So I think as a team we managed it to the benefit of the team as good as we could. I don't think we could have done any better than that one, and we brought 2 points home from a sprint race, which for us before we didn't think we can achieve that. So I think we did a good job. Obviously he wanted to show that he can go faster, but we always look at the GPS data, and we knew exactly where we were at with both cars. So I think these are things he will learn with time, you know. But we explained that as it happened before the race, so in the end it was good. I mean, he realized that the team needs to score the points, and whoever can score more points, that's the guy which will stay in front.
And also, I mean, it's great for the team. Good. So you got some really good points the last 2 races, and your drivers seem to be on a level with each other where they can really push each other and get the performance out.
Yeah, that is fantastic that Mick closed the gap really to Kevin, and what Mick showed fighting with Verstappen in Silverstone, and what he showed with Lewis in Austria was fantastic to see, you know. These are the big boys, these are some of the best, if not the best, you know. So it's very good that you have got Mick up almost up to the speed.
Out of 9, I upshifted and was massively delayed. Oh no, I went over a bump, but that shouldn't happen.
Understood. Thanks for that.
Listen, good. So thank you very much for joining us. We'll talk to you again across the weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've been watching the Red Bull here. We saw some tape or some plastic wrapped around.
I think it was a tear off around Perez's suspension, but I don't know what Max said there. I missed it.
Well, he was saying, Paul, that the traction's not great on the exit of 9, and he said he knows he rode over the bump and the curbs, but still it doesn't feel right the way it reacted. So yeah, something for the team to look at there, and it's a very important corner, turn 9, because that takes you all the way up the hill through turn 10, scene as it's called, and that's flat out all the way through towards Le Beausset at turn 11. So that carries with you from turn 9.
Costly.
Yeah.
Mercedes haven't lost out anything putting De Vries in the car here. He's within a tenth and a half of Russell straight away. A bit nervy for Russell at the same time, but there's that bit of tear off on the left-hand side of your screen. Yeah, the team will probably just pull it off and let
it go. Left-hand side of your screen, I should say, yeah.
And the reason the suspension is covered like that and that shrouding is because it's an aerodynamic part of the car. So anything fluttering around is going to disturb that flow.
That's a good job by De Vries, though. He's obviously been well prepared in the sim. It's a track that he probably knows very well.
He's quick, like we know, like we said before, he even jumped in the car here, and he had a great young driver test in Abu Dhabi as well at the end of last year.
So why has he not had a chance before? Mercedes have put drivers in other teams before.
Too many drivers, not enough cars, Rachel. Always the same, usually always the same in Formula 1.
He joined Mercedes quite late, though, didn't he? He was a McLaren junior kind of through his start and through his early days. Why they never gave him a chance, I don't know what the reasons were for that. They obviously released him, and then he got picked up by Mercedes and FE at the point when they were just kind of going into it seriously alongside Stoffel. It's been a great pair in the two of them, Stoffel and him, where they are, but where does the journey take him on to next year? I think he's going to end up in World Endurance from what I hear with Toyota, trying to combine that with a Formula E drive. So is that with duties in Formula 1 still as being a reserve? And that's where I find it unusual that they haven't got the next person, but I guess that's an age thing. De Vries has kind of been similar to George, maybe just wrong place, wrong timing. George has got that. George has got the stability, so you kind of need to look 4 or 5 years in advance to bring your next person in, because they don't really need a change now. They'll have George signed up for many years, and I think what they'll do is, when Lewis does leave, they would probably take a big contract with somebody that's a known quantity alongside George at that point. I don't know what you think.
That's exactly what they do with George. You're right. When you're running such a top team, it's hard to convince everybody in that team to take that, in inverted commas, risk on somebody that hasn't got that wealth of experience. And it is frustrating when you're a driver, when you know you've got the skill and the speed to do the job, and it's convincing all of the team to take you on. And I think that was a frustration for George for many years. Even though he was at Williams doing a great job, it was still hard to convince them. It arguably took them too long. Max Verstappen, meanwhile, on a great lap here, 2 personal bests and fastest overall as he comes up to the end of the second sector, almost 4 tenths up. Looking committed into Labose. You throw the car into that one, let it run wide mid-corner. The understeer builds as you reach the exit of the corner. He's too wide, he's too eager on the power, a bit too greedy, and that's what happens. The exit curve there still carries the speed, but could have been faster.
You lose a lot of time running over that curve, don't you? Because you just can't get back to the right to get into the left, and it makes it too tight with the run that you need heading down into turn 14, which is the right to get into the left, and it makes it too tight. Oh, the DRS opened and closed.
As he comes across the line, goes quicker than his previous.
But you can see that final sector.
Cost him, didn't it?
Yeah,
cost him. Slowest final sector. Should mention Alex Albon, who's there in P6 right now in the Williams. They've only got a couple of small updates to the car, but going very well so far this weekend. Carlos Sainz quickest in that final sector. Updates to the car, but going very well so far this weekend. Carlos Sainz quickest in that final sector. Updates to the car, but going very well so far this weekend. Carlos Sainz quickest in that final sector. Updates to the car, but going very well so far this weekend. Carlos Sainz quickest in that final sector. Updates to the car, but going very well so far this weekend. Carlos Sainz quickest in that final sector. Updates to the car, but going very well so far this weekend.
Cars.
We had 5 abreast in Austria at one point, didn't we?
Yeah, but for the whole race. We won the whole race. 6 cars, the whole race.
Much, do you?
But this is the thing.
No, it's not much.
Mercedes have definitely got the race speed. When they put the fuel in, they're there, aren't they? But they're just too far back in qualifying to challenge for that ultimate win unless something happens. And at the moment, they're a second down. Can you reinvent a second? Can you get yourself in there? They'll definitely be quick enough on Sunday, I think, where they are. Their tyre wear is normally quite good in hot conditions as well.
It seems to be a bit of a turnaround this year, doesn't it? It used to be a bit of a Achilles heel for them, was the tyre wear in hot conditions, but actually looks pretty good. If anything, they can't get enough temperature into their tyres, as we saw in the restart, the final restart in Silverstone with Lewis. So it's very kind on its tyres, almost too kind, and maybe this is what they need, that extreme heat on a track that is going to be punishing, particularly on the front of the car, the front end of the car. A lot of understeer on this track. We call it a front limited circuit. You need a bit of traction for those slow speed corners of turn 15 and 5, but it's predominantly the front end that takes the brunt of the force. And yeah, we saw, where was it, Melbourne, another front limited track. The Ferrari was very quick there, and we saw the Red Bull actually struggling a bit with graining in that race. So who knows what's going to happen once we see the long runs during FP2.
Speed trap, though, there's nobody kind of within 10k at the top end of what Red Bull are able to do. So Red Bull are definitely slipping in a straight line, and that's how they won the race last year here. They ran less downforce than Mercedes. They managed to do a two-stop and obviously made that impact on the overtake.
And this year, if you can get that floor working, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, at the beginning of this session, if you get that floor working, it's almost like free downforce, and then you can just bleed off the wings, relying less on them, and they're the draggy part of your car, really, the wings. You want to generate as much as you can from the floor. I think that's the key for this season. It's something that Red Bull have managed to do very well.
And if you're already complaining about a bit of understeer with low downforce, that pushes you into that direction as well. Because generally, when you start to add downforce, it generally beefs up the rear end.
Not a bad lap from Gasly as well, within a second of Verstappen's fastest time.
So Pierre going there, P4, behind the two Ferraris and the Red Bull. And we're just having a look here at the gaps. Average time gained and lost, Paul.
Yes, I think that sums it up very nicely for you, to be honest.
It does what it says on the tin.
It shows you where Ferrari are versus Red Bull, very, very close. Mercedes obviously been a good benefit. I would have expected to more than that, actually, but it just shows you with the averages, it compresses all that data just a bit more. But, you know, obviously Alfa Romeo being the worst and the worst losers of it all.
Yep, indeed. Looking to, well, try and get back on track in that midfield battle, but we'll wait and see what happens then. Yeah, as I said, Max Verstappen then quickest so far. Let's see what they do in the final runs in this session, though. He's ahead just by 8 hundredths ahead of Charles Leclerc. Carlos Sainz and Pierre Gasly in P4. George Russell, the quickest of the two Mercedes. Sergio Perez and Lando Norris putting in a decent lap for McLaren, but Alex Albon up there in P8 in the Williams so far. 17 minutes left to run then on this session. 17 minutes left to run then on this session. And we're halfway through the season now, 11 races of the 22 down. And 11 to go, 2 now and then the 9 after the summer break. The development race is different. We mentioned this already with the cost cap, but who do you think is performing the best so far in terms of their catch-ups, if you like? The way they are catching up, the way they're turning problems around and getting back to it. I mean, is it Ferrari because they're coming back so quick? Is it Red Bull?
Well, Ferrari obviously started really well, and then Red Bull sort of got the upper hand for that mid part of the that first half of the season. They really looked like they were coming back strong and unbeatable, actually. And then Ferrari now, the last race, 2 races, look like in terms of race pace at least, they've just got the edge, so they've brought it back. But I have to say, looking from Bahrain to where we are now, the way the car looks, the way it's been developed, I have to say that the Mercedes, they were in massive trouble at the start of the year.
They've made the biggest gain.
I think they've made the biggest gain. We all expected it as well. They were never just going to sit down and accept that the car was, you know, ill handling and a poor ride for the whole season. It looks like a very different car now to drive for them, the way it reacts on the bumps as well. So I think they've made the most progress, but of course others have progressed as well. But it just seems to be less of a kind of bucking bronco that they were having to deal with in the early stages of the year.
I think the biggest thing with Mercedes as well, the pain they went through with the porpoising, they fully understand why a car is porpoising. And I think that comes into development.
George Russell talking about tailwind into 12.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was going to come up there. I didn't
that's fine.
And I think that's where the big benefit will be, and I think that's what will pay off for them in future development, actually, as opposed to probably Red Bull and Ferrari, who a bit more optimised, maybe a bit more luck involved, a bit more thought early on. They've been forgetting about that and just purely going for performance.
For me, just looking from the outside, so watched the Austria race, wasn't there with Sky that weekend, so I watched from home, and the one area where I see that car, the Mercedes, struggling time and time again, is straight line speed. It's draggy, it makes them vulnerable. It's like I mentioned to Günther earlier on, they looked strong, Haas, and almost to the point where Lewis got re-overtaken by Mick Schumacher after he had done the job. It took him ages to overtake. Perez sailed past effortlessly when it was his go to come up against Schumacher. Lewis, well, he had to wait for a mistake.
But is that because they've had that in the past, and then these new regs? Yeah, they had it before. I know it's new regulations.
Oh, it's unique to this year.
Unique to this year, but is there an element maybe perhaps of complacency where you think, well, we know how to get that. We've done that right in the past.
I think where they find it hard, Mercedes, this year is clipping. It's consecutive laps and being able to use the battery, the hybrid bit of your engine, and get the recharge back into it. It's maybe just a bit less optimised than the Honda and the Ferrari. Certainly the Ferrari seems the strongest in that sense.
You'll definitely naturally get more of that as well if you've got a draggy car.
Yes.
It just uses more energy to push it through the air. So yeah, it's definitely an area they need to work on, and well, I'm sure they are. It just uses more energy to push it through the air. So yeah, it's definitely an area they need to work on, and well, I'm sure they are. It just uses more energy to push it through the air. So,
Well, this is what we want to see. We've got Charles Leclerc on a quick lap out there right now on track. And as we're watching this, and
yeah, so fastest first or personal best sector for Leclerc on that long run down after this, just at the end of the second sector. Loses time there in comparison to not just himself but Max as well. Just at the end of the second sector. And into Le Beausset, turn 11, runs it very wide on the exit there. Russell complaining about the that wind in turn 12 where Leclerc is right there. So yeah, they're all having to battle that today, and it's not called the Mistral Straight for nothing. We're up at what, 450 meters above sea level here, and it can get very windy.
mischievous straight, I would say, as well. And as he comes across the line, we can see that he goes fastest with a 1:33.9, so beating Max Verstappen's lap. And I mean, they're trading times, and it's what we wanted to see. Trading times at the top of the timesheets here for this morning. This is the battle we want to see. As you mentioned, we want to see Mercedes in it as well and make it a six-way fight, but at the moment, almost a second down.
Yeah, very early stages, of course. Like we saw, there was a mistake from Verstappen. Haven't actually seen a full onboard lap from either of the Mercedes drivers. You can really hear the Haas there. Mick Schumacher through turn 10, seen just touching the ground so much. Into turn 12, this is where the wind is, and yeah, picking up the understeer. They never saw the apex of that corner and would have lost a little bit of time through that one. Into the penultimate corner, turn 14, the car in front of him. It's Gasly lets him through into the final corner, turn 15. Square the car up early on the throttle, as early as you can. Not taking too much of those curbs, loses your traction. And yeah, not a brilliant lap by Mick. It was a set of non-personal bests, 3 sectors.
Looks a lot front limited at the moment, doesn't it, the way the track is? I wonder if that's just because it's not rubbered in yet. The green track. So we've had a bit of F2 running this morning, W Series as well, but obviously these F1 cars are the things that really make the track ramp up. But
new tyres really help around this track. I mean, they help always, but
why specifically?
It's just they give you so much extra grip on this surface, and because it is punishing as well. On the tyre, they're overheating and they'll start to grain up as well, as being a front limited track like it is. A new set of tyres. The undercut around this track is super powerful, and we have to watch out for that as the weekend goes, particularly race day.
And there's no warm-up phases. So when you've got 59 degrees track temperature at the moment, you know, you're just going to get that benefit as soon as you get into the first braking zone, first traction. You're just making inroads on the person that's vulnerable, staying out.
We can find out how hot it is right now because Ted's down there in the pit lane for us in the heat.
Yes, it's well, a monitor is saying 31 degrees here. Is that what your computer is saying in
We've
front
got
of you?
cooler up here, but maybe our thermometer's in a different place. We've got 29, but at track temperature is almost 60.
What would the TEDometer be? A scale of 1 to 10?
Well, only about a 7.
Ooh.
Wow.
Yeah. No, there is
You're tough, Ted.
Well, I mean, it was 34 is when it starts to get hot, and then we've had, well, of course, we had 40 degrees in the UK, but I wasn't in some radio mic equipment. Right, okay, let's get on with it, shall we? I want to tell you about the McLaren upgrades, because this is a big story. There are lots of upgrades up and down the pit lane. We'll do them in the course of the weekend. There's stuff on the Mercedes, some stuff on the Red Bull as well. A little bit on the Ferrari, but not very much. But the McLaren have brought the most, because it's been a strange season for McLaren, hasn't it? They kind of missed the main Bahrain test when they had their brake problems, and they've been playing catch-up ever since. And so I think we've had a compromised McLaren for the first half of the season, but this is where, Team Radio.
Just check everything is good with the car, because I bottomed out.
Yeah, just check the rear of the car and the bottom of the car. I'm sure they will. But this is where they really start to get serious, I think, McLaren. And it's a new engine cover, which I think you can see, hopefully, between some mechanics' arms towards the back. Underneath where the D of Android and south of the Arrow logo, around, I don't think you can see the
yeah,
Gulf
we can just
logo.
about see.
So,
just about see, yeah.
So it's a new side pods, new engine cover, and significantly new floor and new diffuser, and that's where it's going to make the most difference. And for the moment, for this session, it's only on Daniel Ricciardo's car, because they do want to do the classic engineering back-to-back comparison. So Lando's got the old package for this session, but we'll have the new package for the rest of the weekend if everything goes well. And Daniel has got the new upgrades package. So yeah, it's quite a lot. I think McLaren are pinning quite a few hopes on it, not least Daniel Ricciardo, who wants a car that he can do business with, he can feel more solid underneath him. And let's see how they go throughout the weekend.
And Ted, I mean, the official notice says it's for reliability concerns, but we saw the issue for Daniel with the PU in Austria, and then Lando had that brake issue, didn't he? So there are little niggles coming into this car as well.
There are bits, and I've asked on the power unit side why it is when Lando keeps having to go back to A for Alfie, old dependable power unit number 1. Why don't they just bite the bullet and take power unit 3 or even more and take a penalty? And Andreas Seidel, McLaren team principal, said, look, we have to understand what's going wrong first before we just blithely take an engine penalty and bring another one in. We don't want to bring another one in and have a suspicion that the same thing is going to happen. So that was his rationale. But yeah, as I understand it, Lando will be back on the engine that was going hot in Austria for the rest of the weekend.
Okay. All right, thanks very much for the moment, Ted. I mean, the extra money that's been allowed in the cost cap, surely that's going to come into play for some of these teams as well now.
Yeah, but I think with that as well, taking another engine as well means you're probably going to run out of mileage later on in the year, and then that's a huge cost by taking another power unit as well.
Yeah, so paying customer.
There's a bit of responsibility in a sense, depending on the failure, I guess. Maybe on Mercedes side, I don't know the ins and outs of what it is and what you get, whether you just pay for your 3 and that's got to get you through the year. But that could obviously play a part in the cost cap, and that would definitely wipe you out and send you over the limit of what's allowed.
On board now with Max Verstappen again.
Yeah, he's on a cruise lap, busy building up to push again. You can get a little bit of extra juice out of these tyres if you back off for a few laps, and obviously you can recharge the battery at the same time.
Paul's heading off to join Simon in the paddock.
Back into
right,
the heat.
let's have a look and talk us through this one.
So here we go on the run down to turn 1, just before the 50-metre board. It's a bit of lift and coast going on there. Not sure this is going to be a full-on attack lap. Nice and neat, tidy on that curve on the left-hand side. On the run down towards turn 3. Use a lot of that curb on the right to help open up the left of turn 4, and then again for turn 5, feed it in. He was a bit unsure of the front end there. It looked like he had a bit more than he was expecting. Yeah, look, already 1.3 down. But it's interesting to see how much he's having to drive within the limits of the tyres now. Now they're a bit older. So flat out, 8th gear, no DRS. So sure signs that this is a bit of a longer run approach. Another lift and coast before the 100-metre board. Again, that front end just biting a bit too much for him. Mid-corner of turn 8. Avoids those curbs on the left-hand side of turn 9. He mentioned before that the car didn't feel very good over them. He's learnt that lesson. On this long run, he's trying to keep the car under control. and not excite it in any way into Le Beausset.
A lot of them having trouble here at 11 and going off.
Yeah, the wind will always affect you. It's such a long corner, you can get a lot of different variations of wind directions. You go around there, and again into turn 12, a bit of understeer, but the rear looks like it's in check on the exit. That's what you want. Nothing to bite him on the exit of that one and lose you valuable momentum. Ease the car into the penultimate corner, pinch it back for the final part. He loses just the front end a bit in the mid-corner of 15. It's a little bit late on turn-in, and it understeered. It looked like it was losing front-end grip as the lap went on. That was quite interesting. And he's continuing again now in towards turn 1. So yeah, you can see just on that left-hand graphic there, he's lifting off the power, that green bar, lifting off the power before he presses the brakes, a sure sign that he's trying to conserve a bit of speed and helping tyre wear mostly before attacking into 1. Got a bit of tape on the right-hand side with that side pod just seeing there. So, it's not a normal graphic, but
Jonathan Wheatley, is that on the pit wall for Red Bull? Let's see if Lando, I mean, you can see him bouncing there on this as well.
Yeah, you see the head there just bobbing up and down. It's normal when you go over the curbs, particularly in these cars. He goes for a bit of a tighter line there, just experimenting with that turbulent air coming off the car in front. Gasly reporting no damage to the floor. We didn't see where he went off, but obviously felt it was a bit of a rough ride.
Got Nicholas Latifi in front of him here, Lando.
Picking up that slipstream. You can see how, if you've got a nice slippery car, how it's very effective on this racetrack. That's interesting. He takes a lot of curb there on the inside of turn 9, but on the exit avoids that curve. And once again, look, drafting up to the car in front. Latifi, you see the car just harvesting a little bit, those red lights flashing. Lando pulls out, goes for the move on the inside of Le Beausset, and yeah, you can just see how valuable it is to have that straight line performance on this track. Into turn 12, an area where Ricciardo lost the front end before and had a big lock-up. The car looks much more sorted there this time around. And again, they're all just on these longer runs at this stage of the session, just over a minute to go. How does it compare in this corner compared to the car we were just watching? Oh, hooks up much better, I feel. When he was off the throttle there, you could just see he got much closer to the apex curb. The car had a bit more rotation than the Red Bull. Yeah, but 4.8 seconds away. That's you're shaking your head. It just means they've put a lot of fuel on board.
Yeah, no. I was looking at that compared to his previous lap.
Yeah, when you put the fuel on board these cars, it's like a different category of car. You know, you can lose easily 6 seconds of lap time just from a new tyre and low fuel to old tyres and high fuel.
Which is why it's empty for qualifying, essentially, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a big performance gain.
But you also have to know how the car responds in those conditions, which is why you're doing the long runs.
Like we mentioned, tyre wear is going to be key for the race.
And that's what caught Red Bull out in the sprint in Austria and caught them out in the race in the end, because Ferrari saw on the Saturday in Austria that their tyre deg is worse than they were expecting, and we've got them on Sunday.
It would be one of my only few complaints. I like the sprint weekends. It would be one of my few complaints about the format is that you get to see what's going to happen with the tyres during the sprint race. You get enough of an idea. And basically, Charles ended that race in the sprint race in Austria knowing what was likely to happen come Sunday afternoon, and so did Max. His body language, despite winning the race, here's that repair I think I saw going on the right barge board or side pod area on Max's car. Adrian Newey down there as well. Something's come loose, hasn't it? And I saw that bit of tape.
There was tape, there was white tape around.
There it is, look. Yeah. So something's failed there. I'm not exactly sure how that's happened. I should imagine it's excessive curb riding. The corner where we saw him go off was turn 11 exit. So I would have expected the left-hand side to be damaged, but you never know. Maybe the right-hand side took a bit of...
They brought updates to their floor fences and their floor edge.
So sorry, just going back to what I was saying in Austria quickly, you know, that, of course, it's a precursor to what's to come if the conditions are exactly the same, which they pretty much were. And yeah, sure enough, as it unfolded, Charles ended the race in the sprint saying, I reckon we can get them tomorrow. And
well, he knew they could, yeah. Walking with him on the Sunday to do the interview before the race, he knew he was bouncing almost through the paddock on his way to the grid. And I just thought, you've seen something there that tells you you've got this one.
And Max had seen it too. You know, he ended the race 1.7 seconds behind Max, and Max thought, well, I was pushing towards the end of that race as the checker flag comes down this session. And for somebody that's just won, with all that Dutch support that he had there, he didn't look the happiest I've ever seen him at the end of the sprint race victory. And of course, he had a very tough, or a tougher Sunday compared to the Saturday. And
sitting duck almost, wasn't he?
And of course, he had a very tough,
even when he was in the lead.
Because of the tyres, yeah. And Leclerc had that advantage. And who's going to have that advantage here? That's why they're doing the homework now in this session.
I mean, Leclerc's put in the fastest lap today. We saw that earlier on. Max, less than a tenth behind him.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been, to be fair.
He lost out. Charles lost time on his lap as well, as Max losing time.
Yeah, we don't know why. I didn't see any mistakes, but there was a definite mistake in Max's lap.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that middle sector was pretty poor from Charles. Not sure why that was, but we definitely know there was at least 2.5 tenths from Verstappen on his lap with that turn 11 excursion.
Max does have the quickest sector 1 and sector 2, so if he had nailed that sector 3, you would think he probably would have gone quickest in this session just now. He would have gone quickest in this session just now, but it is close. It's really close. That's what we want. George Russell's up there. Lewis Hamilton will get back in the car this afternoon, of course, but Pierre Gasly and the AlphaTauri, we were saying, you know, they want their updates, they want the upgrades to try and get back into this battle, but a good lap from him as well.
Points so awarded on the Sunday, and that's where you spray the champagne. And well, I say, yeah, for this weekend, the points are only awarded on the Sunday. But yeah, in Austria, of course, we had the sprint race. But
track limits penalties in Austria.
I mean,
I never got your thoughts on that. But
it was excessive.
For 3 of them to get 5-second penalties during the race.
It's a hard fast rule this year. You go over the white line with all 4 tyres, you're going to get some kind of penalty, whether it's a warning, a black and white flag, or a time penalty. And it's good that the race director is sticking to that.
I'd like to be in the driver's briefing tonight, knowing what happened in the last one.
There's no excuse.